Okay, well, thank you all for being here today. We're going to start so thank you for coming. I hope it's okay for all of you to be recording. We have 3 panelists with us today. First, I'll introduce Eleanor Felton, who is behind the scene and has helped bring the message to you all, and is helping us co-host and making sure that everything goes according to plan. I'll introduce myself, Florence Navarro. I founded Kichocheo, which means catalyst in Swahili, a few years ago, to help social impact and mission-driven organization hire the talent that they need at the stage of growth where they are. I see some people I've worked with in this audience, so thank you for being here. So we won't go very much into the bios because the 3 panelists are going to tell you how they got here today and what get them excited about innovation. So the first part, we have 3 themes today. We're starting by talking about who the panelists are and how they got to where they are today and what role innovation plays in their lives and what role they play in innovation. Then we'll talk about what does hiring for innovation actually mean. And then we will talk about what does it look like to build a culture of innovation. You're encouraged to ask questions all along, and we will address some of them, but we will also make sure that there's at least 10 minutes left at the end for Q&A. So our first panelist is Michelle Reisinger, founder and principal of Rising Solutions.
Hi, everyone. As Florence has said, my name is Michelle Reisinger, and I will tell you a little bit about my journey to innovation. And it's interesting. I wonder if the other panelists have had this question before, but I feel like I'm often asked, how did you get where you are? Because innovation is a kind of career path that's not as clear as other career paths are. And so I would say that my journey actually was unusual. I have 2 bachelors, one in international relations, one in history. I knew I was interested in the international humanitarian aid space when I was starting my career. So I went right into country work, and I was working with the American Red Cross in Iraq and Afghanistan for many years, doing more traditional humanitarian aid work. And it was in that environment that I really started asking questions about the way that we were doing things. And this was a very unusual position. I was actually a civilian embedded in the Army, which, as you can imagine, was a very rigorous, structured, hierarchical, top-down kind of experience. And I found myself increasingly disappointed and frustrated in kind of the lack of flexibility, the lack of iteration, and little did I know, kind of at the young age, that I was really embedded in one of the strictest systems for rigidity. And so I began asking about different ways to do our work. And that was when I really started getting interested more in human-centered design as an approach to innovation, a much more bottom-up focused approach as opposed to kind of the top-down approach that I was living in. And what happened in really what I will call a serendipitous twist of the universe was I left that position at the Red Cross and was hired into a very unusual position at an international development nonprofit called PACT. And at the time, PACT wasn't really sure what they wanted from this position, but they knew they wanted it to do a lot of innovation. They wanted it to do a lot of testing. And so I ended up sort of inadvertently becoming the organization's first innovation officer. And this was back in the fall of 2013, before innovation was really kind of institutionalized in the social sector. It predated USAID's Global Development Lab, and it predated a lot of what we're seeing now, which is more standing institutional innovation teams. And so I spent about 7 years as the director of innovation at PACT, at this international nonprofit. Had a lot of learning experiences running the team, both as kind of an internal consultancy for the organization, providing services to our projects and staff, while also managing kind of an external consultancy where we were bidding on contracts and grants in the innovation and human-centered design space. And so I opened Rising Solutions 2 years ago. We are a small women-owned innovation strategy, design thinking, and professional facilitation firm. And I'll just wrap by saying that the definition of innovation that we tend to hold around is a unique, novel, or original idea that creates new business value or business impact. And so we keep the impact piece because we are predominantly focused on social innovation, on social impact. But for us, it's that idea of a unique, novel, and original idea that adds new value in some way. That is the definition of innovation that we hold to. Back to you, Florence. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to hear from Monica about her experience, and I was noticing that there are some similarities with how Michelle Reisinger came to innovation. So Monica Kang is the founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. She's an author. She wrote Rethink Creativity. If you haven't read it, do. Monica.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Super excited to have you all. Looking forward to our discussion and also questions. And so feel free to, comment and share in the chat, but such an honor to share this time with all the other panelists. As Florence has picked up already, similar to Michelle, I would say, the long story short, I would have not imagined being where I am today if I just followed the cookie cutter path that I thought I actually enjoyed. And I say this with the premise that, for all the planners in the room, the type A's in the room, that's me. I look back at my old journals and got to the dot of this is what I'm going to do at this year. This is what I'm going to be accomplishing. This is where my life is going to be. And I love it, right? That's the part that we bring the joy. And because I was pursuing international affairs, government work, public policy, detailed planning is helpful, right? You want to know when you're going to get to certain career tracks. And I was specifically in the niche of nuclear weapon security at that time because I wanted to really find something that was a functional track, being Korean American, working in Northeast of Asian affairs. And you're like, wait, I thought you do innovation. Why are you talking about all this? Well, that's kind of the fun gamut, right? As Michelle shared her story of how she kind of fell into innovation. Similar for me, I don't think I ever thought of myself as a creative or innovative person, but looking back and now doing the work I do, which I will get to in a little bit, is a reminder that actually all of us are. Many of you, whether you have a title that says innovation or inspired, or maybe perhaps you describe yourself I'm not really sure, I want to check this out to see how I could. The truth is we all are innovative and creative. It's just how we label it and see. And it took me a long time really to the bottom of being stuck and depressed in my job that I loved in nuclear weapon security to get to the discovery of how powerful creativity, innovation, and mindset is. And I launched my company InnovatorsBox. And yes, it wasn't an immediate step. There was a lot of up and downs. Happy to elaborate. But to that transition, because I realized what made me so stuck was the lack of access. So as Michelle shared her kind of goal, for my kind of motivation and drive to InnovatorsBox and everything I do has been realizing that I knew how much I love and was driven in the work I do, but yet I still feel stuck because I felt a lot of the innovation conversation, creativity, people development, let's be honest, we all talk about it, but but it's such a jargon, it's such an exclusive, elitist, and sometimes very like particular group of audience, and it didn't make me feel included. And that's not really helpful when this is something that we should all have for everyone. And when I finally realized that yes, this is something for everyone, and yet why am I or people like me in all these other industries feeling excluded? What can I do to be that bridge? Was kind of my curiosity start as I was finding healing in my own journey. And so that led me to hence, exploring what does it really mean to be creative? What does it really mean to be innovative in the workplace? What does that mean as a person? And recognizing how that daily transformation leads to that culture of people development transformation. And so now with InnovatorsBox, we specialize in leadership development, people development. I work with a lot of both innovators in different places around the world, really thinking about what does it mean to build a culture in a workplace where everyone can be innovative. Not just the one who has the innovation titles or the C-suite, but a workplace for all. And so really honored to be here. Can't wait to dive into the conversations. And let's hash it out because this is really for everyone. It's not just for those who have the titles, but totally tons of strategies. And yes, I was happy at my job before I left. So
thank you, Monica. You really set up the discussion. So now we would like to hear from Karen Reijnen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to Michelle and Monica and Florence for being part of this panel. It's so nice to hear your stories, and I do indeed see some similarities already. So I actually have the title. I'm Innovation Director for the Rainforest Alliance. But that doesn't mean that I come up with all of the ideas. Absolutely, that's not what we're doing. I really see my job to make sure that we source ideas from everybody, and that we make sure that we see, select and enrich those ideas with everybody in the organization. So very much resonates with me what you're saying, Monica. So for me, innovation is really the process that takes ideas from inception to impact. So as Michelle was saying to me, impact is also really, really crucial. What you often see is that organizations do a lot of trials or pilots, but I think the actual impact is what needs to drive. So it's really about how do we scale, how do we really implement new solutions so that they can drive the impact in the real world and not stay in little pockets of the organization or little trials. So that's really important to me. I ended up in innovation, you could almost say out of frustration, or if you frame it positively, because of my drive to make impact. I have a background in economics, and I worked as a consultant for quite some time. I worked for NGOs, for the World Bank, for larger organizations, UN organizations and companies, supporting them with their sustainability strategies. And after a number of years of being in that development world, I felt that the solutions I saw were just not sufficient for the pressing problems that we have in the world. We need to address climate change, inequality, poverty, and the current solutions that I saw were just not enough to make the real change that is needed. And particularly in my field as Rainforest Alliance, where we work with international supply chains, there's a systemic change that is needed that is pretty hard to reach. But I really felt that we were not making sufficient impact with our existing programs. And so when I got the opportunity about 3 years ago to set up an innovation team, I felt that would be a good way to make the changes that I felt were needed. So 3 years later, I have set up a team, relatively small team yet still, but I think we're making already a big difference in the way that we approach innovation in the organization and in the way that we develop solutions. So that's how I ended up here.
Thank you very much. So you all made sure to set up the scene. So our first theme, our second theme will be the one we spend most time on. If you do have questions, please feel free. But the second theme is talking about what does hiring for innovation mean? And I would love for you all to tell us what does innovation mean to you or mean for you, so you can let us know in the chat how you define innovation or how innovation relates to you right now. So my first question is, there are different categories of innovation. As we were preparing for this panel and we were brainstorming, we were like, which innovation are we talking about? So Michelle and Karen, let's start by Michelle. Michelle, can you tell us, in your view, what kind of innovations are there? And how do you define those?
Yeah, so within the context of this panel, and particularly hiring for innovation, as we think about maybe like the skills that you want on your innovation team, one of the things that we wanted to draw attention to was the intersection of innovation and digital. So a lot of times in our work, people just kind of assume that when we're saying innovation, we mean digital innovation. And particularly within the social sector, a lot of innovation does mean digital innovation because traditionally the social sector is 15 to 20 years behind the private sector in terms of the tech that we're using. And so it's a little bit of a circumstantial issue there, because in the social sector, the digital tech that we're using feels innovative because it's new to us. And so introducing data analytics or an app or different technology into our interventions feels like it's new and innovative. But in reality, we would just have to ask ourselves, are we just optimizing the programming, or is this truly innovative? And that kind of comes back to the definition. Is it really a truly unique, novel, and creative idea that's leading to new business value or to new impact? And I think in a lot of cases, when we think about digital innovation and the value add in the social sector, yes, absolutely, it is value add, but it's not necessarily a new, unique, or original idea. And so there's something to consider in that regard about the innovation conversation. And I would just encourage all of us, as you're thinking about building cultures of innovation or launching innovation teams or having initiatives around innovation, there's that question of, where does digital and technology fall into it? Does digital and tech fall under innovation, or is it separate? And kind of how are you defining and having that conversation? Because I have found that there's just kind of generally a lot of nebulous understanding in that space. And so there's not necessarily subsets of innovation per se from like a technical standpoint. I would ask sort of Karen and Monica as well, but innovation can take place in any shape or form, any realm, any technical area. But then you think about the skills that go into that, and you want to be asking, am I hiring for the skills that I need as well? And so the reason why I wanted to mention the digital tech piece was because if you know that digital is a part of your innovation efforts, then you want to be making sure you're bringing those skills into it. Otherwise, and I'm sort of teeing up the next part of this question now, you're then looking for broader skill sets around project management, facilitation, the ability to run an innovation process, and then even more importantly, the mindsets that go into that, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about later. So yeah, just wanted to kind of kick off around that conversation on juxtaposition between digital and innovation, because it is very common in our space to equate the two, conflate the two. Do we separate them? Do we keep them together? So I'll pause there.
Karen?
Yeah, I can probably complement that, Michelle. I think for what I generally see innovations teams to have like two main functions in an organization. And the first one is to really drive disruptive innovation, which I think, well, both of them are actually quite related to technology, but they have a different function. So the first one is really to drive disruptive innovation, coming up with completely new programs, new services, new products that you deliver for new kinds of target groups. And another function is really to drive a culture of innovation. So to develop the capability of everybody in the organization to think innovatively, to test quickly, and to assess innovations as well. And I think these functions are quite different. And especially for me, it's been quite a journey to really distinguish, like, what kind of people do I need to have in my team to be able to fulfill the first function, which I think has a more, like, for leading disruptive innovation, you need like more creative, strategic thinkers who can kind of pull an innovation from like super high level ideas to an actual concrete minimum viable product. And for the team that drives more that culture of innovation, you need people who are like good facilitators, who are trainers, who like to work with cross-functional groups, who can bring people together, who are relationship builders, and who are really good at managing that process in the organization. And I think the two have similarities. So you're looking for similar skills in those teams, but they also really have differences in terms of what kind of people you're looking for and how you select them.
Thank you. It's a great setup for Monica to tell us more about, thinking about those two kinds of innovation. What are the skills needed for innovation? And maybe you can talk to us about what are the similar skills that we're looking for, and what are the ones that are different depending on which kind of innovation we're talking about.
No, I love what's being shared because it's a reminder that, hey, it's not as cookie cutter, right? It's not like this magical box of like this one thing you can do the checklist. And I understand, especially for those who are entrepreneurs, who are HR, recruiters, who's thinking about, wait, I thought I was going to get the one, like the hack that's just going to be the simple principle. And I'm like, surprise. I mean, you might need to actually take extra care in even finding these people differently, because even looking at their journey, the right person might not even have something that you thought that they need, but it's the skills, it's the mindset. And I think a couple of things that I want to bring to surface for those who want some other like frameworks that's helpful. I found it always helpful in the innovation business language, the 3 Ps. Some of us have probably noticed it. They often refer to the people, process, product, innovation. And I think often in the workplace, we emphasize a little bit too much on the product innovation. But I think we underestimate the power that goes in the process and people innovation. And so I would be somebody who's like specializing in the people innovation, right? Investing in how to innovate the people, so that way they would drive the process, the product, and all these other things. But process is also something that I really geek out as somebody who loves project management and operation. I know Florence would agree on that, where I like to systemize everything and see from a big picture. And this actually goes back to then the question of what skills are needed and in the environment. Because even though you have the people, even though you have an amazing product, if your process is not innovative or supporting it, then guess what, right? Your product is going to be stifled. Your people are going to feel stuck, and everything magical that we just talked about, believe it or not, your people will be like, you know what? This workplace is not helping me grow. So farewell. And that's probably not what you want. So yes, like, think about the mindset, right? Think about the culture in workplace. And I think another commonality as you're thinking about this, well, is there at least a common thread among all innovators who really, would thrive in whatever environment? And I would say, look if they are coachable and have a strong self-awareness. There's many other skills that I absolutely agree as well, but even if they are highly empathetic, even if they're amazing project manager, even though they have an impressive resume, if they're not self-awareness, if they're not an active listener, if you feel like they're not coachable, I'm not really sure that if they are the right innovators for the team, who you probably want to find somebody who wants to grow with you, not somebody who's already resume perfect and you just plug and play, right? You probably want a team member who wants to grow with you, navigate all the challenges. And look at us where we are now. We are about to walk into many more business challenges. I know all of us real time, right? Supply chain, leadership, talent, recession, pandemic still is here in case we forgot, right? And so it's crucial. And so I say all of this to go back to, at the bottom line, go back to where you can and cannot. Think about the 3 Ps and try to break it down. Because I think at times when we think about, we need to have all these different values, and I would list as well, right? Curiosity, courage, creativity, resilience, empathy, right? All these values, yes. And take this systematically and operationally, right? Think about, why is it that you really need this innovator for your team member? Why is it that you really want to innovate? What is it that you're trying to innovate? and have a real heart-to-heart conversation with you and your team, because are you trying to do this just to make it look nice on the marketing? Is it because we really need to innovate the product? Is it that you need somebody who's going to inspire other people to ask more questions and be daring? Depending on what that why is, that's going to lead you to the type of people and the skills that you need. But really crucial to have clarity in your own team and the company to know, why is it that we want innovation and what is this really for? Because you might end up having an amazing person, but not the right fit, and actually being disappointed on both sides. And also, can we talk about waste of time and energy and money that you probably do not want to do as well? And so those are kind of different segments that I want to bring to surface, add to the spice of discussion, and passing it back to Florence.
Thank you so much, Monica. So I noticed as you were talking about why is it really that we need to innovate, Michelle was beaming and shaking her head. So Michelle, maybe you can build on that and go maybe more into the details of, so how do you identify those skills and recruit for those skills that all of us talked about?
Yeah, thank you, Florence. And Monica, I love the people process products. I'm really glad you brought that up. And I'm also really glad you brought up the why, because it's fascinating to us. Within our work with Rising Solutions, oftentimes we're hired by clients who want us to institutionalize an innovation team, or write a global innovation strategy, or backstop an existing innovation team. And fundamentally, we always come down to the why. So what is the end goal to which we're doing this? And it is continuously surprising to me that sometimes we have clients who have a hard time telling us what the why is. You know, we want everybody to be innovative, or we want everyone to be an innovator, or we just want the whole organization to be innovative. And so the point then is sort of, to what end? You know, do you want, like Karen was saying, are you aiming for transformational disruptive innovation projects that require very intense dedicated time and resources, usually an intentional innovation team progressing these new ideas? Or is your intent really to create a workplace where ideas and collaboration and creativity are flourishing? And that's where culturally you're wanting the psychological safety for new ideas to bubble up, and for the organization to really just have a healthy ideas culture, if you will. And part of the reason I was smiling, Florence, was because I don't know if anyone saw the news this morning, but Elon Musk basically released a statement to Twitter employees saying, you have 48 hours to decide if you want to work extremely long, intensive hours for Twitter if you choose to stay with the company. And if not, click this button and you'll get 3 months severance. And it was the most unempathetic, servant leadership, compassionate leadership messaging that I've ever read. But I also couldn't help but read it and think to myself, what a waste. You have 7,500 Twitter employees, all of whom have the ability to leverage their unique values and experiences and skill sets to be more creative. And instead, your approach to them is basically to use them as commodities to fuel the intense work and productivity that needs to go into salvaging Twitter. So it's just very apropos to me that we're having this conversation today, when that release from Musk came out, and now we're having a conversation around, to what end do we want innovation at a company? So I just wanted to kind of start with that, and then get a little bit more specific. And then I also would be curious to hear Monica and Karen's thoughts as well. But more specifically, when it comes to skill sets, I will say that you tend to need a suite of different types of skill sets that I like to refer to the ambassador profiles which if you're not familiar with, the Ambassador company has 4 profiles within innovation. You can be a generator, a conceptualizer, an optimizer, or an implementer. And those 4 skill sets, in my experience, tend to be a really great complement and bedrock on any innovation team. So you've got your generators who tend to like to ask, what if, how might me, they're your divergent thinkers that really like to brainstorm and shoot ideas around. Then there's your conceptualizers who like to take those ideas and really start mulling them over. Like, how would this actually work? What would it look like if we really started getting this going? And then your optimizers look at ideas and they're saying, okay, well, we can tweak this and improve it here. We can shift this and make this a little bit better. And then your implementers are usually your people who are just ready to get going. They want to stop talking about what all these ideas are, and they want to start doing some of that implementation. And so from a skills standpoint, your generators and conceptualizers, they tend to be very thoughtful. They tend to be good listeners. They tend to be very collaborative and creative, your empathetic problem solving folks. And then your optimizers and implementers tend to be heavier on the process side of things. Kind of like Monica was saying, they're the ones that want to get the work plans ready to go. They want to start testing things. They want to start getting into the nitty gritty of how things will actually work. But encompassing those 4 positions is in my mind, one really critical aspect of anybody who's working on innovation projects, and that is comfort with ambiguity. And with all things with innovation, we need to be comfortable with things shifting and changing. We need to be comfortable with this idea that we're testing hypotheses, that we don't have all the answers yet. And within those 4 roles, hiring for skills around propensity for risk, comfort with ambiguity, those are all things that you can test for in a hiring process. And I can speak more to how we test about those things when we recruit, but you really are going to want people on your team that are okay with the ambiguity, with the uncertainty, who can stay optimistic in the face of that uncertainty. Monica says that different communication styles. Absolutely. Yes. You know, how are we hearing each other? How are we progressing our ideas in a way that makes mutual sense to us as well? So for my part, I would add, look into those 4 ambassador profiles. I can drop the link into the chat. And then remember that within those 4 profiles, this propensity for ambiguity and uncertainty, the willingness to stay positive and optimistic in the face of not having all the answers, is really critical on this kind of fuzzy front end innovation that I've sort of been talking about. Back to you, Florence, or to the other panelists as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Karen, do you want to build on that and tell us how do you identify, first of all, are those skills that resonate with you, and how do you identify those skills? Could you give us?
Thank you. Yeah, I can just give you sort of maybe a very practical view of how I hire people and what I always do in interviews. So the skill sets resonate, and at the same time, you can never find people with all of those skill sets, right? So what you're looking for is indeed people who are sort of, you need to find a diverse team with different skills. For me, it's also really important because the Rainforest Alliance is a global organization that I have people from different regions. So I very intentionally hire people in Latin America, in Kenya, in Asia, like really to make sure that they can connect with the regional teams that we work with, because it's otherwise, you know, time zones are already difficult, and it's really hard to connect otherwise with, you know, what really the needs are of those people who are working in the countries that our work needs to have an impact on. Maybe like from a very practical point of view, what I always do in interviews is I ask, one thing is I ask candidates to do a case that is relevant to the work that they'll be doing. So I kind of develop something that is really specific to like a challenge that we have, and that, you know, I'm hiring the person basically for that specific challenge. Kind of draft that already, and then ask them, what kind of process would you use to develop and test innovation concept, or how would you go about this, or how would you, you know, could you maybe develop and facilitate a short session so that I can really see how people put their knowledge in action. because you can really find a lot of information online about innovation, about like how you should be doing it, right? You can all read about design thinking or lean impact, but what you really see is how people use that information and how you put it in practice. So I think that's really, really important for me to see that in an interview. And another thing that I always ask is, have you dealt with resistance before? And can you give an example of how you have dealt with that resistance? Because in whatever function you come in, if you need to drive that disruptive innovation, or if you want to support the organization to innovate, there will be resistance to change. People do not like changing the way they work. They do not like it if you come up with different products or services that seem difficult and complex. They're already super busy, and then my team comes in and says, hey, look at this, we have something super cool, can we not do that as well? And everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, but how am I ever going to get that done? So I always ask people, like, give me an example of how you deal with resistance. And there are a ton. There's not one right answer, but you just need to see, I want to see in people that they have dealt with resistance and that they know how they personally can manage that, like the frustration that you sometimes have. How do you deal with that? And what kind of solutions do you search? Are you going to find alliances? Are you going to, like, I don't know, show the beautiful impact that we might have? There's a ton of different answers. And I just really want to see how people have dealt with that in the past, and that they are able to do that in the future.
That is great. Thank you so much. I really resonate with what you talked about. At Kichocheo, we help our client do an interview process and an assessment process that can also mimic as much as possible the real positions or work that the candidates will be in. So I love your example of doing case studies or case and having people present and kind of real life situation. Strongly recommend something like that. I also like, Karen, that you spoke about the frustration, and this is something that I often get to test as well with my clients, because most of our clients are actually a common thread we found among all of our clients is that they love learning, and learning is very important, and the ability to fail and support each other to learn from failure in an organization is very important for a lot of our clients. And so also knowing, trying to test how you deal with the frustration. I was surprised to hear you talk about that, because many people, when you think of innovation, you think of like excitement and all of the bells and whistles of innovation, but it's also important to understand how to deal with the frustration. So kudos for that. So Monica, that's a great set to, can you find innovation talent in-house? And if so, how do you develop and nurture innovation in-house?
I love the framing of the question already, because it's a reminder that we should be looking for talent everywhere, right? Not just outsource, not just people who have a certain background, but you might be surprised, right? Hopefully your workplace is kind of honoring that has piqued some of your team members' curiosity to wonder, hey, you know what if I could do this differently? And also, honestly, creativity, innovation, the bottom line starts with that first question: how can I do this differently? What if, right? Having the courage to try something new, exploring. And as you've heard from the examples both Michelle and Karen has shared, and even Florence, and that it sometimes starts with that one step. And I would take that in the same way in asking that question, how do I find that talent inside? Well, start noticing how your team members show up, ask certain questions, and see where their genuine interest is. And maybe at times, ask them directly. What are the things that you are looking forward to? How do you want to grow in this company in the next few years? And let them express and communicate to you. And maybe for them, they might not say the word innovation per se, but maybe what they're breaking down, going back to the details of what they express they are interested in, that in itself could be the innovation. And so the first, especially for leaders in the room and the HR people in the room, I would first up your noticing and active listening skills to really catch those nuances. And when you do see that, this goes to Florence's second point of how do we then help them foster that skill, provide opportunities, right? Are there opportunities internally where different team members and colleagues could share different ideas, see how they respond, right? See how they respond to those frustrations or resistance, see how they actually try to initiate, implement, see how they seek out mentorship or other learning opportunities. If somebody is interested in training, what are the ways that your HR team provides? What are the ways that they get mentoring? What are the ways that they could attend events? Are you sharing those resources, right? So in a way, because I think the right people would probably be the one who is self-motivating, the least we can do is first giving them the groundwork to see what are they going to grab and reach out for, and creating that environment, and hence having the skill to notice that. And of course, there might be those who might appreciate that a little bit more handholding, right? Step in to say, hey, I just realized everything you just described that you want to do. Have you thought into a track of innovation? We have this team, or like we're looking to do more innovative things. And I think what you just described is that. Drop the hint, right? See how they respond. Maybe they'll be like, oh, I never thought about it, but let me think about it. Thanks for believing in me, right? That is so key. And I think all of us probably here, I assume, in the room would resonate in that it doesn't matter if it's not innovation. When somebody notices us and sees us and recognizes us for who we are, we feel seen and appreciated. And so at the very least, when you noticed how your different team members are showing up or expressing or wanting to grow, they're going to really feel valued and appreciated, and hence be motivated to want to give more, to try more and learn more. And so I would, yes, many more tactical strategies, but really this is the bottom line that I would really, really recommend to start.
Thank you. So there's a question actually, which is really interesting. Jeremy notes that how can frustration be used as a tool to develop individuals and to develop a culture of innovation? Thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy noticed that all three of you panelists mentioned in your stories that you basically came to innovation from a state of frustration at some stage. So I know we're getting a bit off script now, but I wanted to respond to that question because it's really interesting.
I'd love to piggyback, if that's okay with you, and kick off and say, first, Jeremy, thank you for noticing that, right? That's the noticing skill that we just spoke of. So kudos in catching that. And it's such an excellent observation, because what is so interesting is like, what's the correlation, right? Like in the aftermath, this is where I love Steve Jobs' quote, right? Like, it's so much easier to connect the dots afterwards. It's so much harder at the beginning. And there are probably people who face frustration, but you don't see the innovation. But for some reason, a lot of the people who find innovation, you'll see how they overcame frustration. And I wonder, one of the secret sauce is that it's not the frustration piece that's the important, but it's the attitude of how we approach and respond to the frustrating moment that leads to innovators being the innovators, not giving up, seeing that as an opportunity. I remind myself, actually, I mean, this is the humbling point. Whenever I have a disagreement or I feel frustration, literally, even now, right? Because we have conversations with different colleagues or clients, and like, I find myself like, oh, I'm getting into Monica being upset mode. I try to remind myself of like, okay, the innovator Monica would remind me that this is an opportunity to learn a new skill. What's the new skill I'm learning from this? What's the new awareness I'm gaining about this client that I would not have otherwise gained until we face this friction? And maybe I'm realizing that they're really stressed, or maybe I'm realizing that, oh, there's a different way I should maybe reach to them more personally, more relatable, and maybe what I'm saying is not relating with them enough. And that was a skill that I realized that I had to reframe. And I think the exciting part, and again, maybe the optimistic voice in me, is that the more you do, the faster it becomes and easier it becomes. And so I feel humbler that the pandemic actually has helped me grow even more, I think, in a lot of these active listening and resilient skills, because nothing goes the way you plan. And I think that has been a reminder of like, how do I then up this skill whenever I see those frustrating, and even in the personal lives, when you have disagreement with your friends or like miscommunication, holding that as an objective awareness that I am noticing that I'm upset, but it's up to me and how I want to respond. And having that capacity, I think, is a beautiful skill. So leaving that as a starting point.
Thank you. Michelle, you're on mute.
Monica, you've done a wonderful job of kind of encapsulating that question. So the only thing that I would add would be the way that I would kind of say it is assume the benefit of the doubt when you're starting to get frustrated, that it's just a problem of something not working, and that you need to unpack what's not working in order to leverage that frustration into something that will work for you. And so I liked what you said about the introspection, Monica, and I think the way we've always articulated it is to assume good intent, to give the benefit of the doubt, and then to dive into the frustration instead of avoiding the frustration. So the Brene Brown, the vulnerable leadership, going into it and touching it instead of moving away from it, and just being mindful of time, and also looking at the note that Nisreen just put in the comment about the mindset shift. I did just want to add that I do think you had said this, Monica, in your earlier statement, that when you're looking for the innovators within your company and when you're looking to solve frustrations and problems, I do think that so much of what you're looking for is an inherent mindset towards innovation. It is the resilience that's been mentioned. It's the optimism. It's the willingness to wrestle with ambiguity and uncertainty, and those mindsets are, in my opinion, if I had to give you one takeaway from this entire panel, it would be focus on the mindsets. Skills can be taught. You can teach skills. You can sign people up for courses. But the mindsets, that's where the gold is. That's really something that's inherent in who the person is. And you can cultivate the talent and the skills. But the mindset plus the attitude is really what it takes to have successful innovation. And so I just wanted to kind of +1 that, Monica, especially as we started talking about frustrations. I think it's the mindset and the approach to the frustration that ultimately will be that leverage point.
Thank you. Karen, you want to add something maybe to what's the difference between skills and mindset, and what should we hire for?
No, I fully agree. If I look at the people that I've hired over the past 3 years, there are people with a background, had worked for NGOs in monitoring and evaluation. Someone worked in creative industry. Someone who has a finance background, like not the typical kind of people that you would say, like if you make a profile that you would think of for innovation. But I think indeed the most important thing to me is like mindset. It's about attitude. It's about wanting to learn. And I do think that, linking to the frustration, or maybe it's more like a drive to make things better. I think that's something that I see across the people that I hire, who are really, really, you need to be pretty passionate about the change that we want to make, that we need to make. Because of the complexity of the work. Like if you just need to develop a new product for a commercial organization, it's a lot easier. Like the things you measure is just profit. Like you need to have like a revenue there, and that's like, it's relatively simple. The kinds of innovations that we're working on need to change systems that have been in place for such a long time. And social change is also particularly hard to reach. You don't see the results quickly. It takes very long. And so you need to have like a sort of a constant resistance and persistent on really being on the goal and continue working towards that goal. So that is something that I'm looking for also in people.
Thank you, Karen. So I want to recognize somebody, in the audience, Elaine, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. If you want to speak a little bit to your statement earlier about, yes, values and appreciation really count. Because our last piece is like, so how do you retain talent for innovation? So you want to speak to that, Elaine?
Sure. Sorry, the dog is sick. That's why my camera is off. I'm not yeah. But value and appreciation, I believe, is key, because then you'll really see a person as an individual high. And going through my career myself, I think sometimes everyone kind of just gets lumped, especially when you're on a team and the individualism is lost. So when you truly, or even a client, when you truly start seeing like the small nuances about them, you're able to value those things, because more than likely, even within myself, those small nuances that people appreciate about me are the core things that I value in myself. And it helps me when I'm being innovative or when I'm problem solving. It makes me look at the world a little bit different. And it also makes me look at maybe that individual or group a little bit different, which changes my mindset towards the problem solving within itself.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this contribution. So we're 7 minutes to the end. We want to be careful with your time. There's been a few questions, but do we want, does anybody have any question that you or comments? If not, I would like to, Monica, we still want to hear from you for a few minutes on how do you retain talent for innovation? And then maybe after that, you can start the wrap up by telling us one thing you want us to live with today.
Do you want to dive into that question first before we do final round?
Yeah, you have like 2 minutes for that question,
okay.
2 3 minutes for that question.
So to retain
your piece of wisdom we should live with today.
Thank you. So yeah, first, Elena, thank you for sharing that. I think it was really wonderful to hear the insight right on different aspects, and I'm so grateful for everyone who's here. I hope it's been helpful to take a moment to pause. And to your question of retaining talent, I think we kind of already touched, I think, indirectly in many regards in our conversation, but really just think about like, how is your workplace making them feel seen and heard? Actually, to that very comment, right? Like, do they feel like they can be an active team player? Do they feel like there is space to grow? I think going back to Karen's comment about, maybe for innovators, frustration is not the end, but it's also like an upward drive to really wanting to grow. Are you giving them the chance to let that drive flourish? Because if they're not, that's probably when they're going to be like, okay, then this is not the place where I feel I could be innovative or I can be myself. And that's probably why they would leave. And so the one word of wisdom, I guess the final note that I'll end with is that I still want to go back to the self-awareness piece, because it goes back to still the why comment, right? As we just briefly touch upon. What is the awareness that you have in that your team really needs? Why is it that you really want to innovate? Who are then the people who has that self-awareness who can grow with you? And as even Karen said, right, like going back to really hiring for that diversity. And that means you have to know what is the diversity you already have in your team first to see what is then the gap that you want to fill. And so I think self-awareness in that meta multiple level, not just the individual self-awareness, but your team awareness, your leadership awareness, your company awareness, I think is really key. And take it one day at a time. Start with one action. You're not going to have to do everything immediately, but start with one thing. And that one thing is the start of everything else that could come. And so excited for what you'll do. And please reach out any questions that you have, and look forward to staying connected.
Thank you. Karen, you want to give us your last thoughts, what we should go home with?
Yeah, definitely. Very much enjoyed the discussion, by the way. So thank you all for contributing. So what I think is just important is that, innovation is really crucial for the social sector. Like if we want to achieve the SDGs, we all need to innovate on everything we do. And I want to emphasize that it's also, although I do think everybody can learn, and like innovation is not a difficult thing to do, but it is a competency, and investing in innovation skills and in innovation management in your organization, I really think is one of the best things you can do to have more impact.
Thank you. Michelle?
So I would end by saying, if I was gonna bring together what we've kind of talked about for the last hour, for me, it would start with the why. What is the goal of the innovation efforts? Can you actually even articulate it? Is disruptive transformational innovation like what Karen's team doing what you want? Or is it a greater culture of innovation, more like what Monica's work is focused on? You can't just say that you want an innovation strategy or an innovation team and not have a why behind it. What's the end goal? What's the impact or the business impact that we're trying to make? And then once you have the why, I would say look next at mindsets. So within house, who's already embodying the mindsets that we know are strong for innovation? Can you hire in-house, or do you need to look externally, kind of like Monica has already said? And then only third comes the skills, comes the actual tactical, practical skills around process management, facilitation, agile, scrum, human-centered design. Those things, like Karen has said, they're competencies, but they can also be taught and learned. But what is harder to teach and learn is the mindset. And then we have to know why we're actually doing the innovation. So it's really kind of that pyramid, I would say: why, mindset, and then skills underneath, that really encapsulate how I think you should stage thinking about why innovation at our company, our business, to what end, and then how do we bring it to life.
Thank you so much. So to conclude, I do want to say on the Elon Musk thing, I think it's not a bad thing. I mean, clearly nobody should be working for him who would not feel valued, right? And so self-selection is good too, because it lets you send away people who would not feel valued. So even though it's really done in a very in a way that we would not recommend to any of our clients, in the end, right, you get what you deserve. I definitely thank you very much to the three of you. Thank you, Eleanor, as well, for supporting us. I totally agree. Self-awareness is key, and there is a way to screen for mindset and for skills, and that's what we recommend to all of our clients. Thank you again for attending. Please, if there's any questions that the audience has that you can think of later, don't hesitate to reach out to any and all of us, and to ask us questions, follow our upcoming events. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day, evening, and month. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.